This Choircast podcast is brought to you by Heretic 2 by Matthew J. DiStefano. Ready to challenge everything you thought you knew about faith? In Heretic 2, I dive into LGBTQ affirmation, rejecting divine violence, and embracing universalism in a bold post-Christian perspective. If you're done with outdated dogma and want a justice-oriented, inclusive view of spirituality, then this book is for you. Get Heretic 2 wherever books are sold and start rethinking faith today. This Choircast podcast is brought to you by High Minds. Join host Andy Colenso and Matthew J. DiStefano as they tackle culture, justice, spirituality, and all the big questions shaping our world. High Minds isn't about talking points or hot takes. It's about deep, insightful conversation that inspires and challenges. Tune in to explore new angles, question the status quo, and elevate your thinking. Listen to High Minds wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Radical Love Life, an ongoing series of conversations with thought leaders exploring faith outside the boxes. Hosted by Mark Dilcom and Kelly Wilson.
Hey, Mark.
Hi, Kelly.
How are you today?
Wait a minute. Go. Take two. I'm going to do it first. Here we go.
Okay.
Hey, Kelly.
Hey, Mark.
How are you?
I'm good. So far, the new year has started off well. I'm coming into the new year with low expectations, but
You are.
yeah, it's the last year I think has been about a lot about accepting things as they are and being able to just be okay with reality, even as we fight to change it, work to change it. So yeah, so that's where I am for the new year.
Okay.
Taking it
I
a
like
day
that.
at a
Thank you for-
time. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for putting it out there. I will say, you know me, I'm always a happy-dappy optimist. And even though I have my cranky moments, I still say that I'm freaking awesome. And I am, because I am very fortunate to have an amazing life with amazing people who love me and I love them. And life is not about perfection. I'm very fortunate because of what I have, because of the life I lead that I, for so many years, did not have. So that's why. But there's a lot to be said about what you said. I was not real happy about the most recent elections and how things played out, and really had to process that. But I leaned in on this season of Christmas, which we are still in, as an opportunity to look at things from maybe a higher, greater level, and try to seek where I can open up the door to kindness and to love, where I would look at it a little bit more critically and not so nicely. I'm hopeful that 2025 brings a lot of goodness to all of us. So we shall see.
Likewise. And I think that's a good approach. I try to remember that there's still a lot to be grateful for. And one of the things that I'm grateful for is to know where I live and what my fellow citizens are, like where we stand. Now we can work from a place of honesty.
This is true. Absolutely. I will also say, just real quick before you announce or introduce our first guest, is that we are coming up on our 100th episode.
That's right. And it's coming up soon. Yeah, we've been at this for 5 years now, and 100 episodes, and we're going to have some special guests from the Wayback Machine. Some folks that joined us in our first live event all those years ago.
It's been an honor, Kelly, that's for sure. So with that
Likewise.
said, you want to introduce who our awesome guest is?
Yes, very happy to introduce musician Blair Coyle. Looking at his bio on his website right now, defined by his deep baritone vocals. And when you listen to his music, maybe I think we should play a clip when we put the episode together so that they can hear it, because he's really quite good. Blair Coyle's indie folk rock sound blends anthemic energy with raw poetic storytelling. Jumping ahead, after years as a worship leader, Blair's faith was profoundly shaken during his time as an evangelical missionary, leading to a crisis that reshaped both his life and music. And we can talk a little bit more about some different parts of his career. He's now up in Canada, which is where he was brought up, and in a different time zone. But thank you for joining us on our clock. But Blair, welcome. Thank you for being
Blair.
Here. Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
So,
do you say aluminium?
I say aluminum.
All right,
I'm half Australian, and down there they say aluminium. There's actually a difference in spelling. They're not crazy. There's an extra I in there.
There's an extra I in there.
Yeah.
Schedule or schedule?
I say schedule. Yeah.
Just had to clear that out. Just make sure that I didn't
Yeah,
offend
definitely.
Canadians in any way. Blair, it's great to have you on here. Kelly, I'm sure you've got some awesome questions already.
Yeah. I've been listening to your music and when I went through, I guess what would now be called deconstruction. At the time, it was really just called, backsliding, I think. But have been listening to some of your songs like Carousel and Winds of October. And these songs really are so honest and really, really express an authentic experience of somebody who's had a relationship with their faith and had that change. Actually, I want to start with asking about your spiritual background, like where you came from, and then how that changed over time, like what that journey looked like.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say I was just your typical church kid, really. I grew up exposed to several different streams of Christianity in the church, from like a charismatic Pentecostal kind of vibe. And then also in youth groups, more conservative evangelical streams, and was exposed to just a lot more of the kind of literalist view of the Bible and a lot of the kind of trends that were happening in youth group at that time, like purity culture and all those sort of things. So that was the moment that I was raised in, for sure. And very much listened to Christian music, and all the Christian media was the only thing that you're really can feel okay about listening to and consuming. And growing up as a kid, you got the message like Harry Potter's bad and Pokemon's demonic and all those kind of things.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's always that war against culture, which is amazing because in the Western world, so much of our culture is shaped by Christianity that churches think of themselves as opposed to culture rather than embedded in it. So with that, coming from that background, I know that can be hard to shake for some people. What were the things that, that sowed the seeds of your deconstruction, or what were the sparks that lit the fuse, so to speak?
Yeah, I would say there's like several phases that I went through, even within different streams of Christianity, from being in the more conservative space. And I hit a wall in my later teens where I just felt like we were very othering to people outside of the church. It's like everyone outside of here is like going to hell. They're the sinners. They're deceived by Satan, kind of thing. And so I was dissatisfied with that. But I've also felt quite drawn in by the kind of NAR charismatic world with Bethel and Hillsong and those kind of expressions. And
anyone who's listening who doesn't know the NAR, is that the New
Apostolic Reformation movement.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's they're very charismatic, into like signs and wonders, miracles and prophecy and dreams and visions and all that kind of thing. And so that led me into joining up with YWAM, Youth with a Mission, which is a part of that NAR movement, and becoming a missionary for about 5 years. And that experience was like really rich in a lot of ways. And it actually enabled me to be exposed to a lot more different viewpoints of theology and that sort of thing, because they call themselves a interdenominational organization. So I had never heard different perspectives on the atonement theories, and never knew there were different options on what to believe. And so that kind of led me down a journey of curiosity, and had a lot of genuine spiritual experiences, but then also found that there was a lot of inconsistency between what was talked about and what was actually happening. Like a lot of talk of like miracles and healing and all that kind of thing. And it took a step back, and I was like, wait, I don't actually see anything verifiably happening, right? Like for real, as far as heal, like, you don't see limbs growing back. It was always like, oh, my headache feels better, or I feel warm and fuzzy kind of thing. Or everything was seen as a miracle. And this view of spirituality that it's like literal castles and kingdoms and medieval imagery of the elders bowing down in the throne room of God kind of thing. And there was a very literal perspective of there's another dimension where that's actually happening. And that was a disconnect for me eventually, where it was like, as I started to realize that there was more perspectives and I had permission to see things differently and explore more, I started to really just question things. And also at the same time, on a personal level, I, for a long time, had been dealing with like very OCD tendencies with faith when it came to my prayer life and, trying to make sure I was constantly getting right with God and this shame cycle, and also throw in the kind of charismatic beliefs about trying to discern hearing the voice of God and spiritual warfare, trying to silence the voice of Satan and battle demons and in the name of Jesus kind of thing in your head. That just led to some really like anxious spirals, and trying to always just like discern what God wants to do with your life and listen and obey, and was like crazy making to a point. And I guess I just burned out, and that just led me down deeper into this process of questioning.
Well, can I ask you, you mentioned shame, and I'm looking at you, and this is the first time that we've met face to face. And of course, like anybody, I form first impressions based on what I see. But here you are, a white dude. I don't know anything about your sexual identity or anything else like that, but I'm assuming you're straight. So I said so.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what kind of shame could you have? And then, not from a judgmental point of view, but can you enlighten us a little bit? What shame did you have is the question. What was coming up in your faith? Because I see it from a different point of view. And so I ask out of pure, honest, what was that? What happened that you would have shame if you were this close to God and doing all of this?
Yeah, totally. I think there's a real foundation of mixed messages in the gospel that I was given, is that from a young age, you're taught that you're broken and fallen because of your sin nature and you're trying to battle your flesh, or that becomes a core belief about yourself, that you're somehow dirty or broken, and you need to accept the belief that you're cleansed by the sacrifice of Jesus. But that never really, for whatever reason, it never really hit home to me believing that I'm actually okay, that I'm actually acceptable, because the foundation of it was that I'm broken. And then add in there like messages about, just basically just like trying to be perfect before God kind of thing. Even though there's conflicting messaging, because it's all about we're saved by grace and all this kind of thing.
Yes,
but it's like we're covered in this blanket of like protection from this God that's not actually safe. And so, and then especially growing up in purity culture narratives in my teenage years, as you're going through puberty and just like discovering your sex drive for the first time. And that causes you to really bury very normal key parts of yourself and exile major parts of yourself. And that happens in every area and just leads to a lot of self-loathing in general.
It reminds me very much of, I grew up in a church that was part of the holiness movement, the kind of Wesleyan Nazarene area. And that whole idea of being perfect, and there was no room for additional sins. Like after that first moment where you're like, okay, I'm a Christian, there is no process for dealing with the fact that sometimes you're going to think a bad thought. Sometimes, or it's not even a bad thought, it's just a natural thought. But if somebody focuses in on,
if you're talking about sexuality and stuff like that,
if you lust after a woman in your heart, then you've actually committed adultery. Like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you're at war with your own brain.
Yeah.
And that's a really crazy making way to live. That's picking up on the word that you say, the obsessive, like always checking in with God. Am I okay? Am I okay? Because he was mad at you in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're always like on the run. That's a hard way to live.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're probably telling the story of so many, because being as a queer person and the work that I do, the call I have is share my story of wholeness. What happened to me because I was broken, because, to be queer in the Christian church is bad, but at least it was definable. I asked from that point of view, but here you are, cis hetero straight dude, like all these things. But yet you imported original sin, took that on as you're already broken. And then, you have to go through puberty, and then you get more of it as well. And it really pisses me off.
Yeah.
Just like, how do you take a kid and do that to them? That is messed up. But,
Yeah, it's wild, eh?
yeah. So thank you for sharing your story about shame. And for our audience, just to that, no one is exempt from that, depending on the circumstance of what they learned, that anybody can have shame put upon them. And that sucks.
Yeah, it's so true.
Now, Blair, was there a moment, you talk about this journey where you questioning and questioning, was there a moment where you're, okay, I'm done? Or like almost like a deconversion moment, or was it more of a gradual process?
I would say there was a lot of buildup and a lot of things that fell into place and like steps that came before it. But there was definitely a moment where I talk about this in my song Winds of October, like the opening line it says, it was the night that God died.
Yeah.
And so
very powerful.
there was just this moment where I was in New Zealand and I was staying at this Airbnb and I was just lying on the floor, staring at the ceiling and contemplating just where I'd come to in my process up to that point. Because this is right after I had left YWAM and my missionary life. And I was really in this contemplative state. And I just had this epiphany that I was like, the image of God and the concept of God that I've had up to this point that was given to me is literally just a construct.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an ugly construct. And I remember just like imagining myself talking to this figure of this angry, punitive God that was going to send me to hell. But it was also like confusingly loving at the same time, just this two-faced God that I had been brought up with. And I looked at him in my mind and I said, let that fucker die.
Wow.
And then, yeah, it was just like, see you, mate. We're done.
Wow.
And then you were set free. Did you feel like a release?
There was
out of that moment? Like,
definitely a release. And then after that, it was still a process. And then probably a few months after that, I was like, okay, I want to seek after truth and find what makes sense to me. And if that means I'm not going to call myself a Christian anymore, I have to be okay with that.
Wow. I love that. I love that honesty of that.
wow.
Were you already making music at the time?
Yeah, I've been writing songs for years and years. I think this process really just gave me something to say to a wider audience, and it felt like something that was really important to share. And before that, it was really just more personal reflections and relationships and lost love and that kind of thing. Still read that stuff, but yeah, it felt like these 4 songs that I wrote over a period of about 5 years just were really important because I knew how isolating and devastating this process can be, especially when you've been so all in with the faith and it's been your whole entire identity. It feels like you've lost yourself, like you've literally died and the world is just like empty and gray and you don't know where to go. So
that's got to be
like
very, oh God, I'm not sure I have a word for it, like scary. So some might use the word devastating, like everything you knew all of a sudden has just shattered. And Kelly and I have talked about this with other guests as well, but deconstruction. And that's a very popular word these days, but this is
bit of
not
a buzzword.
deconstruction.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like just everything just melted
Implosion.
into your hands. And just,
Yeah.
wow. And only you can experience that. And did you find community with others then to start sharing your experiences of how that it's now crumbled into your hands, and where do you go from there? Or is that what you do with your music as a way to communicate?
Yeah, I would say both. I was actually very fortunate to be placed in the right places at the right time with the right people. Right after I left YWAM and my missionary life, I ended up landing in New Zealand, and through some synchronicities ended up staying with a family who's been very involved in YWAM in the past and are very switched on to a lot of the problems and have gone through a very deconstructive process themselves. So that was like a really great first stage. And then from there, I moved down to Wellington in New Zealand and got connected to a very progressive church that had a lot of post-deconstructed people. And was the first time I'd seen a very like queer affirming church, and it was just like a totally new, refreshing experience where I was like, it was really cool to see, and I felt like really held there.
So
And
you
it
said
was also,
queer
yeah,
as this, and I'm going to ask you that because I'm always fascinated by this. Kelly's a beloved friend of mine, and as a straight dude, I see I ask him all these kinds of questions. So I'm about to ask you something similar. Was it something that you saw because you being hetero yourself, but the fact that you were now part of a queer affirming church, was there a wholeness or something that you saw there that you didn't experience before
yeah, there's,
in your evangelical, that you knew something felt right there that it didn't feel, and I hate the word right. How about
yeah,
we felt whole, felt good, felt
totally.
nourishing, felt affirming? What was it that drew you into a queer affirming church as a straight dude?
Yeah, I feel like it was a real growth journey for me because I had gone through a process from being very, very evangelical and being very unaffirming to the queer community. And I remember like when I was in YWAM, there was a vote in Australia to legalize gay marriage, and I voted against it. And then through a process of just seeing gay people come through and trans people come through YWAM, and just the way that they were cast aside and disregarded was just like really heartbreaking. And the more I actually just sat down and talked to those people, it really changed my mind and really grew a lot of compassion for them. And that just really set off my sense of justice, and it really made me angry about the evangelical world. So to experience a queer affirming church where I went to this queer Christian conference where these people are being celebrated was like really beautiful just to witness that. And it was like quite healing for me in a lot of ways. And at that point I had sworn off worship leading entirely, but that was like the one time where I'm like, okay, I'll be back on the worship team for this queer church. Cause it was like screw you to the evangelical world and my past there.
When you had something to sing about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's really that whole process of, or the experience of talking with people who are queer, talking with people who are transgender, that it's documented that Christians who are affirming tend to have more relationships with people who are actually queer, as opposed to so many people that are like militantly against, right now, like transgender people are, like the political football of the day. And I see them and I want to say, do you know anyone who is transgender? Do you know any parents of kids that are transgender? Have you heard their stories? Or is it all just this like imaginary othering, like the othering that you talked about? And it's very easy to get caught up in demonizing people. But when you humanize them, then the empathy can start to flow.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and then one of the other things that really helped me along after that, during around the same time, is I joined up with the Square One group hosted by Keith Giles. And that gave me an online community to process a lot of the big questions that I was processing. So if you find yourself in the initial phase of what the hell is going on, I'd say that's a really good thing to do. I'm not sure if you're still doing it, but yeah, that's great.
Of course. Now there's Choir Academy.
Oh, okay.
That they're setting up, and we'll put some information about that in our show notes.
Great. There's a little plug.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And not knowing that was part of your story in your journey, it reaffirmed to me that all of our paths of wholeness and what faith means to us is each our own individual track. No two people will have the exact same. But when we bump into those who we have othered, and I have othered others because they were militantly against me, and I realized that's not the right approach either, because, I need to learn and love them as much as they need to with me. This all to say is that you doing this, your journey, and then you sharing in this, and it just reaffirms time and again what is our faith all about? I mean, the dude who we build our entire faith around, Jesus, he did this time and again, right? It was showing us that there was no such as othering, and that others othered, but he did not other. He welcomed them, he embraced and radically, and that That's really at the heart of our faith itself, is this radical love and to seek to understand, not to be understood.
Totally.
So I'd love to transition into talking about your music. When I first heard your song Carousel, it reminded me, I've been listening to the song Achilles Come Down, not long before that, the Gang of Youth song. And I was hoping, when I emailed you back, I was like, wow, it is reminiscent. It's got a feeling of Gang of Youths. And
Yeah, I was like, that's
hoping
the
that
biggest
would be a
compliment,
compliment.
because they're one of my favorite bands. So
That's good. I don't know that anybody else that listens to them, but yeah, it's really, and it's like the National, and it's got that kind of like really deep, resonant. There's a moodiness to it that is form meets function, like the tone and the lyrics fit so well together. But I really encourage people to go on the streaming services or to your website to find your music and listen. It's pretty good stuff. What is your process for writing songs? Do you have a set process, or do they just come different ways?
I would say they do come different ways, but I feel like my most poignant songs are questions to myself, trying to process the big questions of where I'm at in my life. Either that or writing a statement, acting as if a song is a letter to someone, of just honest things that I'd want to say to them, like confrontationally. Say in my song, A Miss, I wrote that at the end of my time in YWAM, and it was really just this like honest questioning of, okay, you're making all these promises about fulfillment and freedom and spiritual fullness, and yet it doesn't look like that. It looks like control, and it looks pretty bleak. And so that's, for that song, that's where I was writing from, as this kind of confrontation, honest questioning.
Would you say that in your songs, I know that there's some conflict and definitely some taking on stark issues. Is there hope in there as well? And if so, what is it that you're hoping for?
Yeah, 100%. I think the hope is to shed all the things that don't serve me or serve others, and really find the gold, and essentially just put everything through a furnace and hope that the gold comes out the other end. And that's where my songs, this collection of songs in this deconstruction journey, ends up with the song that I'm releasing in a few weeks. It's really about this coming to a point of the resurrection phase, of coming to terms with all the pain and the frustration about the way I was indoctrinated, but accepting that and holding on to those three things, like faith, hope, and love. They will remain, to quote scripture there. And those are things that don't have to correlate with any kind of religion necessarily. They're just things that are just real. And so I think that's where I've come to, is pointing people towards that place of reintegration and hope, that just because religion and past experiences have twisted these things in a certain way, that there is hope for new life and rebirth.
Would you?
I was going to ask this quick question. So I'm looking at the lyrics of Carousel now, and there is something that's missing from your lyrics.
What's that?
The word God is not in here anywhere.
True. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
That-
I didn't get my
little
Jesus
slur
per
that-
minutes in there.
He died in the other song.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's gone. He's gone.
So categorically, based on what I'm just reading here, and I'm being a little lighthearted here, a little fun, so I hope you will indulge me here a bit. I don't know if I could call this Christian music based on what I just saw
I
here, because
know.
I don't see that stuff in here.
I can't get on K-Love, can I?
And I gotta find your CD at Lifeway.
I think using the word asshole probably disqualifies me. Calling God an asshole is probably not ideal for Christian bookstores.
Yeah, you know what though? I think you should do it. Somebody should do that, because you and I obviously have the same streak inside of us where we want to like come from a loving place, but there has to be some upset to make progress as well.
Exactly.
So,
Got to ruffle some feathers.
I
It's
call
like
God
Jesus
an
did that
asshole.
or something, you know?
Right.
Amen. Exactly. everybody, boy, you can get me off on a tangent there because we have made Jesus into this, I don't know what, like this impotent little thing, right? That it was not radical, was only like this innocent, this perfection, everything else is like, okay, those are our constructs around that. And so we have no idea what he did for the majority of his life. There's that. And then, or anything else inside of his ministry. And besides, even if you do what we do know of his ministry, and I'm going to go to Kelly's point, one of the favorite things is when he goes into the synagogues and he's flipping tables and like making whips and stuff like that. I was like, I
I
don't
love
think that's
that
very
way
fancy
he
pants.
pauses to
Yeah.
make the whip. That's just one of my favorite scenes.
Calling religious leaders broods of vipers, and all that. Just like,
Yeah.
you
It
just
tells
see
them
him
no
in there
breath,
just
smell death.
flipping the bird. That's the Jesus I'm into.
And
Well,
that's
it's
what our
aligned
tribute,
with
right? Yeah.
aligned with the Psalms. It's aligned with Ecclesiastes, and there's places within spirituality for righteous complaint. This is not just. It's like something's wrong. It's bordering on prophecy. What people think of prophets as being predictors of the future, but the prophets were there to be like, everything that's going on right now is fucked
Yeah,
up. Like
exactly.
Fucked up right
like
now.
something needs to change.
Yes. Yeah, it's not going to be fucked up 1,000 years from now. It's fucked up right now, and we need to be addressing it. So
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Blair, I'm curious how you would describe your spirituality now, or if that's even the word that you would use for it, because people, religion, faith, spirituality, how you would describe yourself.
I
in
would
that.
say, again, it's hard to find words that aren't loaded for this
Mhm.
stuff. And I think I'm continually in a process of trying to reclaim things that were given to me by religion that are good things and trying to reframe it again. I would say that I'm pretty agnostic about any like theology. I'm pretty much based on experience now. I'm
Mhm.
pretty like suspect towards any kind of structured belief system. I just go with what I know, and I'm like open, but also there's just like even in the spiritual but not religious community, there's a lot of actual religion. I'm in a kind of a hippie new age town, and it's really hard to not build constructs. It's really hard to live without spirituality because you feel just cut off, and it can be pretty bleak. Yeah, I'm definitely trying to re-engage more, but yeah, again, that's difficult.
Yeah, people love certainty. Like
Yes.
getting into any kind of uncertainty or going forward saying, I don't know, is really challenging for a lot of people.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, like I wouldn't say I like identify with any solid beliefs, but I just know I've had experiences, like I've had dreams that have predicted the future, or just so many synchronicities that I'm like, okay, like something's going on, and I'm just going with that flow. And that's how I aim to live my life, is just to be in that flow of whatever spirit or transcendence, God, whatever you want to call it, is doing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use the word faith because that's just the context I work from. So do you today, looking at your journey through this very large journey, do you feel your faith is deeper because of what has happened?
Yeah, I would say so. I think when you look at it, like faith is really just trusting God.
And it is trust. Yes.
Yeah.
My
Yeah,
definition, faith
exactly.
equals trust.
Yeah. So faith, I think faith that was given to me, the definition was more of believe these set of doctrines without any evidence and force yourself to believe them. And trusting in the belief system. Whereas I'm trying to reframe it, and I've moved towards leaning on what may seem uncertain, but it's a trust in the fact that there is more going on and that there is a transcendent force working things out.
Yeah. Even when you can't put a name to it anymore, or
Yeah.
a particular creed or text or whatever. Yeah. And that's where I resonate best, in that space where, for me, when I had what was probably my second religious awakening or spiritual awakening, or someone wasn't religious by any means, spiritual awakening was realizing that I don't have the answers and I don't need to know the answers. It's just all based on trust, right? And that this will unfold as I explore, and it'll show itself. And it's worked for me for last 13 years. So I'm good with it at this point. Change, quick question for you, because I'm looking at the lyrics of your songs here on Spotify and on your website. I'm gonna put you on the spot. Do you have a favorite song?
Oh, that's so tough. Oh,
It's not a fair question, so you could say, I can't answer that, but I'm just curious.
I don't know if I feel like they're all so different and they really cover different subject matter. I feel like the most fun song is definitely Winds of October, and it tells like the overarching narrative from beginning to end, I'd say. And probably the one that's coming out at the end of this month, it's called Looking for the Light. I feel like that's the most like poignant and like really reflective one, and the most kind of intimate sounding one. That I feel like that one's pretty powerful. Pretty proud of that one. So
And
yeah,
you're
stay
going to be
tuned for
posting
that.
this on your, because I'm actually on your link tree right now, which is a great way
Okay.
to do that. Are you going to be putting that song up when you release it?
Yeah, definitely. Watch my social media. I think it's the 25th or 26th of January, 2025. It's coming out. Yeah. Watch my social media and it'll be up there.
Excellent.
Awesome.
And so for our listeners, as Kelly and I always do, we'll put in the show notes where you can go find Blair. But he has several of songs here, both the videos and also the music itself. And find the lyrics and find you on Spotify, a variety of
All
different
the
ways.
things.
You're all over the place.
Is there anywhere people can hear you play live?
Great question.
If you come to Nelson, British Columbia, if you want to see me, but
Come worship with you?
yeah, totally. I'm going to be putting out a live music video at the end of February, though, so you can get a little taste of the live situation.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Have you already recorded this?
Yeah, I did that back in March before I actually recorded these 4 songs down in Australia. So, yeah, I've just been sitting on that for a while, but it was really great. I got a couple of friends from around here to play piano and violin for the final song that's coming out soon called Looking for the Light.
That is very cool, and especially because did you design in mind, you had different cameras to capture both what you're doing on stage as well as the audience and the total interaction.
Yeah, it was not like an audience situation. It was like we set up actually in a church here. I felt like that was very symbolic. So yeah, so. And it helps that I have a filmmaking and like photography background, so
you
I
had
roped in my friends, and like I was playing like film director and like artist at the same time. That was fun. Yeah, and again, that's why with my music videos, like I directed all those and was able to do this all on a really small budget and edited all those together and stuff. So a lot of work, but yeah, all my skill sets came together on this.
Wow. I can't wait to see that. I think that sounds like it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
For whatever reason, when you said inside a church, the Cowboy Junkies and the Trinity Sessions immediately came to mind. So I was like, is there something similar to that where you just put a mic in the middle and just start recording?
Yeah, mixing sound in a church is very difficult. I worked in
the
Cathedral St. John the Divine here in the city. So
with one of the world's largest churches, right?
It's like a big stone cave, and trying to mix the sound and get the delay right, and so that the people in the back are hearing it approximately, because there's like a 7-second delay in there. But anyway, those spaces are also so great to listen to music in, even if you're not religious. There's a lot of people who like use that space as the cathedral who just go and it still feels spiritual. There's still something about that space that's intentionally built to create some kind of connection with the transcendent that people respond to.
You bring up a beautiful point. And so, Blair, when you did the work that you're doing with your music and still bringing it into church with this example, I was thinking I saw something at St. John the Divine, I guess last year now, that's 2025, it involved Sting. And he was there singing his song. There was about the guy that did the tightrope between the World Trade Centers. And they did this. Yes.
Philippe Petit.
Right.
So Sting wrote a song about his work and he sang it live at this event. And, Sting himself very clearly professes, where he comes from with his faith, but yet the way he sang it and what the song was about and just listening to it inside of St. John, it was like, it still made it a transcendent experience, of course. And there's something magical that can only happen in those large spaces like that, or even maybe a smaller space because of the acoustical quality or something just feels a little different. Maybe it's the moment, whatever. But as I was sitting there, the folks that are there, this was arguably not arguably, it was a secular event. It had nothing to do that it wasn't a religious thing put on by the Episcopal Church or St. John the Divine. It was merely the venue. But yet there was still there's a spiritual connection that happens inside that. You can still feel the magic, dare I say, like the things that we don't understand, but are still there, the connection. And when you doing your music in those kinds of venues, God, I hope you do it a lot, because the worst thing that can happen is for somebody that their faith or their religion, whatever they call it, crumbles in their hands and they just walk away.
Yeah.
And, oh my God, you've just left behind. And I've always felt that, and I'm talking from my own experience, one, it is really hard to be whole when you don't have a grasp on your own faith, whatever that might be. Even if it means you had to process hurt, shame, whatever it is, or this was all bullshit, but not the end of it. There's still a reconnection to something that says, at least I made peace with the greater whatever that might be. And that I allow for the opportunity for there to be something there. I don't know. Maybe this makes no sense of what I'm trying to share, but like your music and what your call could very well be that the connection to that other side to guide people on, to help them take this journey to some sense of peace and wholeness.
Yeah, that's really my hope. Definitely.
Well, there we are.
Yeah.
Well, as we're getting to the top of the hour, I'd love for this conversation to keep going on. I'd love to feature some of your music in the podcast and talk in more in detail about it. But want to get a sense of, since our time is limited, do you have an overarching message or overarching banner that you hope that your listeners walk away with?
I would say just a call to live earnestly, to live honestly, to live courageously, and to not be intimidated and held down by tradition and systems and structures that can be very intimidating and controlling, that you are your own and that you deserve to discover truth and find true peace.
Amen, brother.
That'll preach. Yeah. I love that. Thank you. I think that's just about all the time that we have. We're going to put all your links and everything in the show notes so people can come find your music, and looking forward to your new single coming out. What's the new single called again?
That one is called Looking for the Light.
We're looking for the light. Right on.
Yeah.
We'll be looking for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys.
Peace to you, Blair.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Radical Love Live, hosted by Mark Dilcom and Kelly Wilson. Recorded at the Bravery Studios in Garfield, New Jersey. All rights reserved. Find our episodes on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And check us out at radicallovelive.com, along with our personal websites at markdilcom.com and kellywilson.com. This is Radical Love Live, where we explore faith outside the boxes.
If you've ever deconstructed your faith, you know it's not easy. But just imagine if you could have people to guide you through your process. People like Jim Palmer, Kristen Dumais, Jennifer Knapp, Brad Jerzak, Brian Zand, Paul Young, and more. Well, if you head over to www.choiracademy.com and register for Square 2 using the promo code RAD, you'll get 10% off the regular registration cost of this awesome course and community just for being a fan of our show.